Thanks, Emma.
Perfect. No problems. All right, welcome everybody for the third of our this year's 2024 CPD sessions. Very, very exciting. I hope you guys are enjoying the Fridays and the vibe, and it's lovely to be able to meet together as one big cohesive team and enjoy a bit of learning. Today, you have got the pleasure of three of the Clinical Excellence team presenting, Renee, myself and Nick. And we will swap as we go and try and make that as seamless as possible. So today we'll be talking to you about working as a high-functioning multidisciplinary team. Good click for me, Renee.
Need a little bell.
The dog will bark soon and that will complicate everything. All right, before we kick off though, in the spirit of reconciliation, it is very important to us that we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. We'd also like to acknowledge the individual and the collective expertise of those with a living or a lived experience of disability, and note that we can only provide quality care through valuing, respecting and drawing from this expert knowledge. All right, let's moving along. Now, as per usual, this is an interactive session. And so for those of you that haven't seen this little image before, this means it is not appropriate to watch and participate in while you are driving. So I'd like to refer you to MedHealth Safe Work Practice mobile phone use for more information. But if you are currently in transit and it's on while you're driving, we would ask you to turn it off and you can watch the recording later. If you are in the car and you are parked safely, excellent, stay on the line. Next slide. We realise it's Friday. It is time to have a bit of fun while we learn. So two emoji-based things. When you are participating and you are listening, if you have a particular response to some of the information, you agree, you disagree, it brings up some stuff, we encourage you to share that live through emojis. Perfect, like that. Not only does it give me a little bit more to work with when we're presenting, but it's also really good for people sitting there who might be feeling the same way to have that kind of validated and normalized. Now, when we get to the end of today's session, as per usual, you are going to find an invitation to react to feedback, which essentially is your opportunity to let us know how you felt about today. So before you log off, it would be great if you could just shoot a little emoji to the comment that will be in the chat, so that we can streamline what we do, improve what we do, so that we're always providing you with the best high quality CPD. All right, moving along. Renee, did you just want to admit that clinician?
I have, well? It's just scrolling.
Lagging, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about multidisciplinary teams. We're going to start with what is a multidisciplinary team, and then really talk about why it's important for participants specifically, what makes an MDT team really high functioning. I shouldn't say MDT team, that's two teams. And then what steps you can take to improve your multidisciplinary work, but what traps also should be avoided when you are completing this. Now, I just want to highlight that we have got such a breadth and depth of amazing clinicians with us at AAA. It means that on the call, and for those of you who are watching the recording, there will be some of you who are really, really comfortable and confident with MDT work. You've been doing it for a while, you come from government health organisations, and you kind of live and breathe it, and that's amazing. There will also be some of you here who, maybe this is your first role in an MDT organisation, or maybe you've never had the ability or the opportunity to kind of work in that space. So for those of you who are not familiar with MDT, we have really tried to make sure that this provides you with the information you need to hit the ground running. For those of you who are a little bit more familiar, we really want to invite and encourage you guys to support the staff that we're talking about today. Understand that we're going to start simple, we're going to build, and we're going to encourage you guys to really lead from the front in your MDT teams after today. So consider this to be sort of the first entry into MDT, and it won't be the last. Just a reminder, if everybody could put themselves on mute, please. I am highly distractible. And if there's stuff going on in the background, this recording will be a little rubbish. All right. Next slide, please. All right, so first of all, in the chat, you don't need to comment out loud, but in the chat, I'd like you guys to pop what you think, given our, given we've only just started talking about this, what do you guys think is a multidisciplinary team? Take a moment, pop it in the chat now. What makes or what is a multidisciplinary team? All right, Renee, next slide. So if we were going to take a very strict language approach, the Oxford Dictionary tells us that it is combining or involving several academic disciplines or professional specializations to approach a topic or a problem. The New South Wales Department of Health had a really beautiful definition, and they highlight that an MDT team is involving a range of health professionals from one or more organisations working together to deliver comprehensive patient care. Essentially what we're talking about in our space is basically clinicians together in a team, collaborating and communicating and addressing as many aspects of a participant's care as possible, because we've got skill set diversity. We've got representations from different disciplines. So it means that the goal is to provide the most comprehensive support possible. And we can do that because we've got representation. It also means that the disciplines we have represented in MDT teams do tend to be determined by the needs of the participant, and that team composition can and really should vary across participants. As we know, working in disability, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really does need to be participant need-led. Next slide. Now, I just want to highlight there are quite a few ways of working within an MDT. We're really going to be highlighting multidisciplinary today, but for those of you who are quite experienced in this model, I just wanted to highlight, yes, we know there are lots of different ones, but as I said, we're going to start and then build. Next slide. All right, another thought or another point for reflection. In the chat, before I tell you guys why we think it's important, why do you think an MDT team, I've done it again, is important for participants? Particularly for us. So thinking us, AAA, the type of participants we have, why is a multidisciplinary team important? Next slide. So first and foremost, MDT is a really effective way to improve participant outcomes. That's why you guys are sitting here today. You've set aside time on your Friday afternoon to learn about how you can do things better, because you're all about trying to improve, because we want to make sure that the service we're providing our participants is excellent. We want the most for them. And so the coordinated care approach of MDT is really known to improve time management and efficiency of resources. And as a result, we know that that has increased satisfaction of care and better outcomes for participants. We also know that for clinicians who are in MDT, it's really fun and stimulating. And so job satisfaction is improved because we're having a really direct positive impact on participants. We can see that happening. It also facilitates respect and understanding of each other's discipline scope of practice, and also fosters a learning mindset between clinicians. It's really cool to see somebody who is a different discipline do their stuff and do it well, and to see the impact. You know, we all love learning. That's why we're here. It's got a little bit of a reciprocal benefit. It also helps us to share the clinical load and responsibility. And we know from previous, all-in AAA trainings that that's really important when it comes to risk management. Being able to share the load, share the responsibility, and to tackle things as a team together rather than having a complex case sit on our shoulders alone. Next slide. If we think a little bit more about it, MDT offers a lot of benefits for both the participant but also the clinician. It gives the opportunity to share knowledge across disciplines in real time. We don't have to wait for referrals. We don't necessarily have to wait for, the participant or another potential stakeholder to convey the information that comes back to us. It's this real dynamic relationship that we're building. What I really like about MDT is that having multiple and unique perspectives means that that discipline lens focus is really diluted, and the blind spots that I might have as a clinician are kind of covered by other clinicians who've got a different set of optics on things. And I really enjoy knowing that some of the limitations that I might bring to a case are kind of covered by what somebody else can see and do. We also know that it is about accessing the right supports at the right time. And I'm sure that all of you have been in front of a participant before where you've gone, okay, I'm going to do this thing. But gee, it'd be great to have a speechy who could support this. Or it would be really good for an OT to come in, you know, with this bit, or it would really dovetail with this. And the cool thing is that we've got this MDT set up. We've got the opportunity to do that in real time at the right time, which understandably supports the participant experience. There is a decreased burden on the participant to recall and tell their clinical information and story over and over and over. And we do know for our participants particularly, this is really meaningful for them. A lot of our participants have come from several providers or several clinicians or a history of having to say the same old thing. And so if we've got at least an MDT team who work properly, that need to kind of recount stuff over and over is lessened for them. It improves continuity of care and reduced wait times, because the team can maintain engagement during times of clinician change. So you've always got somebody in the team who can hold things, and the case is always progressing. It also means there's additional peer support for clinicians who are working on complex cases. We know, unfortunately, that the rates of abuse and trauma in those who have a disability is significantly higher, which means that the information that we are exposed to and the types of cases that we are dealing with are going to be a little bit more complex, a little bit more tricky, and having somebody who is working on the same thing that you can go and debrief with is really important. Next slide. All right, another thought for the chat, please. What makes a multidisciplinary team high functioning? So we've talked about what it is, we've talked about why it's important. Hopefully I've sold that to those of you who are just taking their first steps into MDT. What makes it high functioning? Think about what you've seen, think about what's worked, pop it in the chat. All right, next slide. So we have had some thinking, we've gone back to the research, and we know that high functioning multidisciplinary teams have the same processes and principles in common. We can distill it down to some pretty clear points. First of all, they've got really clearly defined roles, which means that everyone in the team knows what their role is and the associated tasks of that role, and then what everyone else is responsible for, which means that everything is quite smooth. It prevents double ups, it prevents oversights, but most importantly, it prevents those situations where you're both or when disciplines are acting at cross purposes. Things are harmonious and things are smooth. We also know that they have a clear plan driven by a clearly defined goal. And so that sort of path to goal achievement has already been collaboratively discussed. It's been operationalized and communicated to everyone in the team, which means everyone is working in tandem, and the chances of cross-purpose work, as I said before, is quite minimal. You're all being led by the same thing. Next slide. We know that effective coordination is really important in MDT. So how that team's work is being implemented and measured against applicable targets is being monitored and driven by one team member who knows that that's their responsibility. Essentially, what I mean is that we can only have one cook in the kitchen, and we've got to have enough people or enough chefs to get through service. Until I was watching the bear while we did this. But anyway, my point still stands. Somebody needs to be the lead. Somebody needs to coordinate, needs to drive, and there need to be enough people to support that happening. We also need effective communication. And so information that might impact on the work completed by every member of the team has to be shared in a consistent and a timely way. This is really important And it really not only improves efficiency, but it reduces errors and it also supports time management. So in one of the MDT that I'm involved in, we have monthly email catch-ups where we will just summarize what's going on. Everybody replies with their bit, everyone knows. For another one I work in, we've got fortnightly meetings, and that works given the needs of that participant. It can look different, but you need to have a chat about or think about how it is that you're communicating. Right on. All right, so as an activity, what examples of collaboration are you already seeing in your local MDT? All right, we're going to put this in the chat and we're going to call some of these out. And Renee, it's just occurred to me that I have no idea what slide number we're at, so I don't know when I'm going to stop. I'll just keep going until you tell me to stop. All right. We have got being patient-centered. Love it. Having good communication. Consistency across supports. Trust. Love it. What else? What else have we seen? MDT meetings. Love it. Progress report. Joint progress reports. Absolutely. Joint
that makes my heart
sessions.
sing, Emma. Joint progress reports.
I thought you'd like that. Joint sessions. That makes me really excited. I love a good joint session. I think Roxanne's triple dipping in her excellent responses there. OT's helping with sensory regulating strategies and collaboration with BSP strategies. Yes, I love that. Joint reporting to minimize costs. Yes, and strengthen recommendations. Absolutely. We know that that makes the job easier for NDIS, and it definitely it makes it easier in terms of the participants' funding management. Group teams, collaboration messages. Absolutely, particularly when we remember to make sure the important stuff's put on the file. But yes, 100%. Group chats created by the lead clinician involving all AAA staff on the file. Yes. Meetings that include the participant. Well done, Ryan. I love that. Joint clinician sessions. Yes. Feeding back to BSP behaviours or interventions. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love everything about that. 100%. All right.
Fantastic.
Let's jump on. Am I handing over to you?
Yep.
Or is that's yep, I'm done.
This is you for a little while, Emma. I'll take it from here. So we've got a double slide question. We've gone from your question to just getting people to think about how they can take what steps they can take to improve multidisciplinary work. So we won't linger there for too long, but please put your thoughts in the chat as we go on. So I just want to pick up from where Emma left off and just take a couple of minutes to just talk about MDT working at AAA. Some of this, obviously, people out there, the answers you've given already indicate that, you know, in some areas you're really taking aspects of this on and doing it really well. But as Emma said as well, there's a lot, there's other people who perhaps are not as familiar, haven't had the opportunities, might not be in a region where it's as well developed yet. So as a sort of national group, what we want to do in 2024 is really just embarking on a process of elevating our multidisciplinary approach across the country. And it's going to be really important for everyone, participants being able to access safe and effective and efficient support, getting the best outcomes for our participants, and also for our clinicians to have the most rewarding and beneficial experience as well. I started my career in a really, really strong multidisciplinary team, and I really credit that team with all of the opportunities I've had over the years since. It was just the best learning experience, and I really love to think that people here are having that experience as well. So just to bring it back to sort of the practical day-to-day stuff, we do have a range of resources available for you on the internet. And the first one there is a link to the actual MDT workflow. And on this, it outlines some key points that we would consider to be best practice for a AAA multidisciplinary team. So the first one is the allocation of a lead clinician, and that person who is allocated into that role really having a clear understanding of what that involves. So that that lead clinician really is the person who is driving the case. They're responsible for, the information gathering that can be shared across disciplines and coordinating the team. So making sure that we are having regular team consults, whether that's in a written format or a face-to-face format, ensuring that they happen. Obviously, the frequency of that will depend upon the complexity of the case and the participants that we're working with. However, we do recommend that it is at minimum quarterly. So that lead clinician really takes that responsibility for making sure that those things happen. We have, the other aspect of, and again, just covering off on things that Emma's already spoken about, but linking them back to that workflow, looking at the MDT communication and collaboration and making sure that that combined goal setting is supported. And that leads into our next point as well around the provision of the support plan to the participant. And these two things combined actually then allow us to really define the roles within the participants' team of each discipline. So we all know that our disciplines will cross over with many other disciplines that we're working alongside. We can all identify parts of our work as an OT. There's things that I do that the speech pathologist might also be doing, or that the physio might also be doing, or there might be some grey areas where both people have some scope. And what it's really about is working out for that particular participant who is doing which of those things. It does not have to be even exactly the same from one participant to another. Report writing, I love the fact that we've already talked about shared report writing. Absolutely, if we're working as an MDT, what we really love to see is those single reports reflecting the combined efforts of all of the team members. And this absolutely can be broken down into discipline by discipline outcomes where that's necessary, or it might be around demonstrating the shared outcomes of the combined team. But our report templates are set up in such a way that that can be demonstrated, and once again, much more efficient for the participant, but even more joyfully, much less report writing for everybody, because we all know that that's something that is not necessarily what people look forward to in their job. So being able to actually share that and put it all together as one comprehensive report is a massive win for everyone. And that also then transpires into multidisciplinary session notes as well. So really encourage your teams to think about how multidisciplinary session information can be shared. So this might be useful in sharing information as part of your MDT consult or case conference as a team. But it's also thinking about, again, what might be most efficient for the participant. So if there's been a joint session, actually doing a session summary that combines the outcomes of that session into one note as well. Session summary A is really designed, which is in MediBridge, is really designed to be able to do this quite efficiently. It allows you to break down what the individual therapy goals were for each discipline, working towards the participant's NDIS goal. But whatever format, whether it's session summary A or B, just really thinking about how that can be used to optimize the information for the participant. Okay. So the next couple of slides, we've just got copies of the workflow that you can access on the internet. So the link was on the previous slide, and we can make that available to people after this session. But you can see that the workflow is stepped out like any of our other workflows and really just defines the steps that need to be taken, how to choose the lead clinician, what the process of initial information gathering is, and how to support that communication and collaboration with team members. So really this is just to demonstrate that it is there. I won't go through every step of it, and that you can actually find it on the internet. And there's also links to the supporting documents, obviously. So thinking about what type of report is the right report for this particular case, and therefore how that can be put together as a team. Just a quick example of session summary A. For those of you that might not be familiar, it is one of the session summaries available on MediBridge, and breaks down, as I said, into the therapy goals, those the things that you actually did in a session and what progress was achieved. And this can be really this can really nicely summarize what you're doing, particularly I think in a joint therapy session where there might be more than one therapist, and so it may look to the participant or their family as if you're just doing one activity, but actually both of those clinicians and those disciplines are getting different things out of that and are implementing different strategies and achieving different aspects of the same goal. And I think this steps that out really nicely for people. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Nick now, who's going to take on the next part of our presentation, thinking about MDT work at AAA again.
So we've all acknowledged, quite a few of you acknowledged that joint sessions can be one of the real benefits of working in an MDT, and it's important, I think, to consider when those sessions might make the most sense. Whilst it might be fun to work with another clinician, we do want it to make sense for the participant and certainly for their funding. So sort of considerations when thinking about whether to use joint sessions or not include efficiency, and that might be because a participant availability is quite low, but they have multiple things that they're working on at the same time. So thinking about, children once they've started school, their availability around school is often quite limited. When people haven't got a great deal of funding, we can consider how we're using that funding by working, together with another clinician. But it is also worth noting that transdisciplinary working is another benefit of working within an MDT, which we'll hopefully explore a little bit more down the track, where if someone is running out of funding, we have an opportunity to just reinforce strategies potentially. For example, it's been quite common for me in a physio session to be, using communication strategies that a speechy has set up with the participant, and to be reinforcing behaviour management strategies, all of those sorts of things. We do also need to consider the timing of when a joint session might make the most sense. Certainly with a lot of the participants I've worked with, when you're first meeting a participant, certainly with a child, it's often quite nice to meet jointly so that you've got somebody who can have a really good conversation with a parent whilst the other therapist is perhaps engaging with the child and getting a sense of how they communicate, how they move within their world, and that sort of thing. So you've got more capacity for the parent to engage with you as well. And similarly, often in previous roles, towards the end of a plan, we might have joint sessions where we might be, for example, repeating some assessments where having two pairs of hands is really, really crucial to get the best out of the assessment, and getting on the same page in preparation for sort of a plan review time. Potentially thinking about joint goal setting. So we've got another activity for you as well, and just want you to have a think and maybe pop in the chat there about some reasons that you might have had for using a joint session. I've got a list here, but hopefully you guys have got some examples too of when you may have used joint sessions or when you might suggest one. Keep an eye on the chat. Don't be shy. Beautiful. When stakeholders are unsure of the benefit of involvement of your discipline, when professionals are working on the same goal. Yeah, definitely. That was one that I had. I've got a couple of examples of that. EP and OT joint session, teaching a participant how to ride a bike, EP on specifics of starting and stopping, OT on road safety. I love that. When the case is particularly challenging, that's most definitely been a reason why I've done joint sessions a lot in the past. Rapport building, yeah, definitely. Again, I think it gives an opportunity to really engage with the parent, and it's certainly thinking about children, but also complex participants who might have a significant other involved in their care as well. As a speechy, having a joint session with an OT when working with a participant with complex sensory needs, yeah, definitely. I suggest joint sessions to understand how a person is communicating, for example, seeing a person's capacity in a speech session. Lovely. MAT assessments, yep, I've done lots of those with OTs, and they're yeah, definitely a two-person job. And AT prescription, absolutely. AT trials, AT setup. That's been a very common reason for me to have joint sessions too. PBS and speech, when participant is non-verbal and learning AAC to be able to communicate with the PBS practitioner. Yeah, wonderful. Shared goals, public transport, speech pathologist, how to read a bus number, communicate to bus driver, OT to navigate powered chair on bus when getting on and off. Wonderful. Sounds like you guys are doing amazing work. Sharing strategies with the team. Yep. As an OT, conducting assessment with speech as a communication partner. Wonderful. As an EP, a joint initial. Oh, my screen's jumping around. Assessment with physio has been useful. Yeah, lovely. I've done some joint stuff with EPs at gyms where the EP is definitely the one who's giving the most idea about what exercises the participant might do, but I'm supporting with sort of accessing the equipment and how they might do that. With employment and OT, joint sessions helped give an OT perspective of tasks a person can do in a workplace and adjustments that might be needed. Yeah, wonderful. EP and PTs can be friends. See? I never doubted that. EPs are magnificent. I'm just going to check my list and see if I had anything extra. Definitely situations where I've done joint sessions, or if there's really complex behaviour management involved, and just to try and really get the most out of a session. It's a valid use of funding. Complex manual handling has been a reason for me as well to use joint sessions, and when you're really trying to facilitate optimal alignment with the participant, and again thinking about setting up equipment and that kind of thing. Assistive technology trials you guys mentioned. I had another couple of examples. For example, I've worked with speechies quite a lot when mealtime assessments are happening and just monitoring the participants' airway. And similarly, the occupational therapist might be looking, or physio might be looking at posture during that as well, and trying to optimize posture to optimize feeding. Yeah, I've already said about the EP and physio going to the gym together. PBS and speech, yep, working together on communication with behaviour management context. I think you guys have smashed that. Brilliant. Okay, I think it's someone else's turn now.
Yeah, that would be me. But I just want to add another option, which is psychology and PBS. We are so best placed to work hand in glove, and to make sure we're supporting each other and implementing stuff together. So I would just add that. All right, improving your multidisciplinary team. So there are some really, really simple things we can do that are going to have massive benefits for our MDTs to make them run like well-oiled machines. So first and foremost, have the lead take the lead. So we know on our MediBridge cases, they've all got leads. We need to either, if we are the lead, step forward into that space, or if we're not the lead, support them to step into that space. We know having one person who everyone knows has got that responsibility to keep things running is super important. It means that everybody else can get into the doing of their work and there are no double ups and things don't slip through the cracks. The other thing is that lead clinician confidently stepping into that role means that important workflow points are achieved, but they can help guide the team with other processes or make sure effectiveness and participant outcomes are improved. Now, I want to highlight here that being the lead clinician doesn't mean that you are more important in that MDT than the other disciplines. It does not mean that you are more effective. It doesn't mean you're a better clinician. It just means that you are the one who has been identified as either working the longest or the first. If you are the lead and you don't feel particularly confident, that's okay. Check in with your team. Get some guidance. Step into that role. That's where the rest of the team, need to get behind you and support you. Next slide, please. The other thing that you can do to improve your MDT is to set up a multidisciplinary team collaboration plan. Have a chat in your MS Teams chats or in your emails or your face-to-faces over Portuguese tarts or down Chapel Street. Whatever you're doing, meet as a team. Think about how often are you going to meet as a team? What's the preferred way of communicating with all the clinicians in the team? Is it email? Is it MS Teams? Is it phone calls? Is it tarts? What information is expected to be passed on between clinicians? Now, this could involve or include session schedules, session updates. Now, risk concerns, as per our risk assessment and management policy, is something that needs to be communicated regardless. But even having an explicit conversation around risk red flags and warning signs, or it could be just requests. Have a chat. What do you need to chat about? What's important for you to know? And it might be that one discipline needs more information of a particular type than another. That's great. Just be explicit. I would have no idea what a physio would need, whereas an EP may have a better idea of what a physio might need and vice versa. So we just need to have those conversations. If we formalise these things early before the case progresses and becomes really busy, we can really, really save some time because we're already in a really good routine. Now, this is where the lead clinician might need to take the initiative in setting these processes up. If the lead clinician is not as familiar with MDT work as you may be, that's okay, just give them a little prompt. It's about making sure that we are supporting our team. Next slide. It should go without saying we need to be NDIS goal focused. We know that in the work that we do individually as a clinician, but this needs to carry across and be the forefront of the MDT stuff that we're thinking of as well. So if we follow this usual practice of NDIS goal focused work and making sure that we're all working towards a common goal or common goals, we're giving our collaboration a really strong head start. We are not like a herd of cats running in 5 different directions. We are working in the same kind of heading. We all know what needs to be achieved. Now, a sidebar, having a team of clinicians who are working like a herd of cats running in different directions feels very anxiety provoking and destabilizing for a participant. There is nothing more disconcerting. And so what I would encourage you guys to do when you're thinking about making sure you're being goal focused and cohesive and comprehensive, yes, it means you get the job done better. Yes, participant outcomes are better, but they're better because that participant feels contained. Participant feels like everyone's on the same page and there's sort of no confusion in what they need. We can elevate that by making sure that the specific NDIS goal that we are targeting is, and our intervention plan for that is shared with the team so that any gaps in that service can be really seen easily. Now, hint, hint, support plan, really great way to do that. We know support plans need to be on every one of our cases. We know that. But if we can use these documents a little bit more strategically, it helps us to get across what we're all doing. If you're reading through the support plan and you think, wow, that's fascinating, I've actually got no idea what the speech is doing there or what that means, have a chat. Make sure you at least understand in theory, if not in practice, what's going on. Next slide. All right. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, one team, one report, wherever possible. We need to be completing these collaboratively as a team. Yes, we know it saves participant time and funding. It also is a really clear way to demonstrate that comprehensive story to the NDIS. We know that unfortunately our support requests are going to have a better chance of approval if we do it like that. We also know then that the team then gets to continue the great work that they're doing. Now, I also want to highlight that use of psychometrics and self-report measures can also be streamlined. If you've got an MDT who has been communicative and you may have an OT who's done a carer burnout scale, I hope I've got that right, you then, I would hope that OT would be saying, hey guys, I've just so you know, I've administered this today. So then when we come to reporting, we don't need to redo it. The psych doesn't have to come in and administer the same thing. We've already got that done. All right, next slide.
And I think, Emma, I'll take it from here. So just following on from Emma, thinking about all the things that you can do really well and that support our MDT, we have to acknowledge that there can be some traps that we want to avoid. So again, we'll get you just to put some thoughts in the chat around what some of those traps might be and what some of those, negative sort of impacts that might happen from that. I think there's been a few clues in the things that we've discussed already. Oh, there you go. It was actually on the next slide. So the question 2 in 1. But yeah, thinking about what some of those traps or challenges might be. So while people are putting some examples into the chat, I'll just move on. And as I said, we've really focused on the positive things that can be achieved through an MDT and some of the key actions that we can take as clinicians and teams to make that happen effectively. But there's also some key things to avoid in order to further promote that high functioning team. So first of all, we really want to avoid making assumptions. So we cannot assume that other team members will know that something has been seen or done or something needs to happen. And this is really important, particularly where there's issues of participant risk of some type, but also just in general through, to avoid doing the double up. So Emma's already given a great example of, using the team to think about has an assessment task been done that maybe means that somebody else no longer has to do that. But if that communication doesn't happen, or we assume that the other team members know we are going to do it, then what we risk is actually doubling up, doing the same work again. And not only is that inefficient for the participant, it's embarrassing for us, but it also is actually not helpful if we get 2 different results. And then what do we do with that information? Interprofessional conflict is a real trap for multidisciplinary teams. And it is not that we are always going to avoid this. What it is about is really addressing it and sorting it out at the time and coming to an agreed position as a team. So what we really want to do is use the team to problem solve to an agreed solution. There's always going to be differences of opinions. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. They tell me, I've never tried, but there's lots of pathways to the same endpoint. And sometimes it's not even an issue. It's not even about is one person right or another person wrong. It's actually just about what's right at this time, or what's going to be best for the participant, or what does the participant want at this time, bringing their voice into that conversation as well. So where we have those differing opinions within a team, I think it's really important that we do take that approach of it's not wrong or right, but let's think about what we're doing at this moment, and let's problem solve as a team as to what our next agreed action is. I'd also just like to say at this point that sometimes, particularly for really complex participants where there are multiple answers, it's also okay as a team to think we don't know what the answer is here, or we don't know what the next step is. And I'll just give a little bit of a plug for the Clinical Excellence multidisciplinary consult process. You're all able to refer to that process once you've been through sort of that team discussion. One of the things that the team might decide is actually to bring it to that MDT consult with the Clinical Excellence team, where we can support some of that problem solving as well and come up with an agreed pathway for you, or with you, more importantly. Another trap that we might fall into is just letting the file communicate for us. So this really draws into that sort of making assumptions, making sure that we're communicating properly. It's obviously really important that your notes are documented and that all of the information is in the file, but it doesn't reduce the need or eliminate the need for you to have direct contact with the rest of the team. We can't rely on the fact that people will have time to read all of that every time they go and see a participant. So if there's important information to communicate, we should be doing that regularly by email or whatever means it is that we've set up to do that. Another trap for an MDT is, as individuals within that team, is not communicating when we need help. So it's really important that we actually are confident enough to acknowledge when perhaps we've missed something, perhaps we're struggling with something, or there might be something going on that we don't understand or we're not sure how to address. That can be quite confronting sometimes. We all want to feel competent and capable in what we're doing, but we're actually probably demonstrating more competence and capability by being prepared to own up to when we're struggling with things, or perhaps the things that we find more difficult or outside of our ability, even if it might be something that is within our scope of practice, sort of, broadly defined. So I think it's just, that having that confidence within your team and that trust. I know somebody brought that up as a really important strength of a team, to be able to say, I don't know what to do here, or I've tried this and this isn't working, or I'm seeing this, but I don't understand what that means. This is really the best opportunity to let your team help you. It's really opening up those learning opportunities for you, and most likely what will happen is that by learning through this situation, you're going to be in a better position to actually support participants with similar situations in the future. Another trap might be not having clearly defined roles of each team member, and we've talked about this quite a bit. The importance of having those clear therapy goals related to the NDIS goal, really having a great understanding of how, as a team, each of us is contributing to the outcome. But we're doing that by working on different aspects of that goal. And again, it's been really great to hear some of those examples that people have put in the chat. And I think especially where we have disciplines who can be quite closely related. So we've given the example of psych and PBS and EP and PT, where sometimes for the participant, it can be a bit confusing about what the purpose or role of each person is. And if we can communicate that clearly, then everybody gets the best benefit out of that as well. Finally, just forgetting about external providers and clinicians. So if a participant has clinicians who are from organisations other than AAA, they are still part of the MDT. And as long as the participant has provided the relevant consent, we should be including them in all of our team communication as appropriate as well, or all of the communication that is appropriate, but we certainly should be providing them with some updates about how our team is progressing with those therapy goals, and particularly in relation to things that might support their practice as well. We also know that we are regularly having to collaborate with other agencies and mainstream supports, and it's really important for us to know the boundaries between the responsibility of us as providers within the NDIS scheme and other agencies. And so here's some sort of a list of examples of multiple mainstream support areas that we might regularly interface with. And once again, really pleased to be able to say that there's really great information on the internet under the report writing resources tab that outlines, quite clearly the boundaries between the NDIS and these mainstream stakeholders. And that also can help us to define more clearly what we're doing, what our role is, and also what the expectations are from those other support systems as well. Nick.
These next couple of slides are just taken from some literature. So this one here is it's a nice way of using the word teamwork to explain promoters and barriers to working in a team. It was taken from a literature review which identified research that had been conducted between 1982 and 2007, so a pretty comprehensive literature review identifying promoters and barriers to good MDT working. And the promoters of teamwork success included good selection of team members, good team leaders, maturity and flexibility of team members, personal commitment, physical proximity of team members, the internet and email as a supporting platform, incentives, institutional support and changes in the workplace, a common goal and shared vision, clarity and rotation of roles, communication and constructive comments amongst the team. And I think that pretty much summarizes most of what we've been talking about so far this afternoon. And certainly that sort of institutional level support, certainly at AAA, you know, this concept of MDT working is ingrained in the way that we are developing resources and the way that we're trying to run CPD and all of those sorts of things. So it's definitely a institution-backed concept at AAA. I won't go into more depth on that slide, just in terms of just in the interest of not running out of time. This next slide as well is again a nice summary using a framework developed in Canada, which comprises a set of 6 competency domains that focus on the development and integration of attitudes, behaviours, values and judgments necessary for collaborative practice. And those domains are role clarification, team functioning, interprofessional communication, patient, client, family, community-centred care, interprofessional conflict resolution, and collaborative leadership. And again, I think that we've covered all of those. It's a really nice summary of what we've been talking about already today. And it's worth noting that this is, in fact, it's not just the way that's recommended for working within the clinical setting, but it's also the way that a lot of research is being conducted now with, oh my gosh, I've forgotten the word now, but but co-designed research, I should say. So with the person that is the center of the research, the patient, whoever it might be, but actually being involved in the design of the research. So it's very much the way that a lot of the way that we work and the way that we know about what we're doing is being done these days. So the next few slides, we're going to talk about a case study, which is a real case which I worked with in my last job. I worked with this gentleman for 3 years. Was one of, sort of on reflection, one of the most rewarding multidisciplinary situations that I worked in my career so far. And I echo what Renee has said, that I've worked in MDTs from day one as a clinician, and it has absolutely, sort of led me to where I am now in terms of an appreciation for all of the different disciplines that we work with. And I certainly have learnt more because of it. And this gentleman was no exception. So he's a 54-year-old male with a background of cerebral palsy and an intellectual disability, epilepsy, and had deteriorating mobility and frequent falls for a period of time. Lived in a group home with 3 other participants. He'd been institutionalised since the age of 2 and had moved into the group home the year before I met him. And there was a query over whether he had trauma associated with personal care. He absolutely hated being in the bathroom. He was primarily a non-verbal communicator, made very loud vocalizations when he was bored, became distressed and frustrated quite easily. And there was no clear communication aid or strategies. He had a behaviour support plan, but it needed updating in the context of his changing mobility status and how to support him with that. He also attended a day program 4 days a week with a different provider to the SIL provider, and absolutely loved going out in the community. So what do you guys think your discipline could contribute in a case study like this? And it's worth mentioning that pretty much every member of the MDT was involved with this participant. So if you can pop your answers in the chat, we'll see whether you've covered everything we ended up doing with this gentleman.
Maybe people could put what discipline they are and what they think they could offer.
won't put it in the chat, but I'm sure a psychologist could help with some emotional regulation.
Yeah, definitely needed some support with that. We'd have to find out what his key goals are. That will determine support areas. I love that you've acknowledged that this is a gentleman who couldn't identify his own goals in terms of communication, certainly. But yeah, speech, identify gaps in communication functions and exploration of communication supports. Absolutely. Physio, falls risk assessment and action plans, spasticity management plan, assessment for mobility aids and orthotics. Yep, PBS, updating PBS plan, training and implementation with participant and stakeholders, working with team on regulation strategies. Absolutely. OT, community access, assessment, use of public transport, AT, home mods. Yep, PBS, work on his non-verbal communication. Yep, definitely. OT, re-engaging with activities that are meaningful to him and exploring new activities. Wonderful. If you want to flip to the next slide, Renee, I'll just run through what we did do. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I won't dwell on it for too long. So the OT was responsible for some AT provision. He needed a new wheelchair, mobile shower commode, princess chair for a period of time when he was not as mobile. And she also set up bed and chair alarms to try and support him with the falls risk, and talked with the group home about environmental modifications. The OT and myself as the physio together looked at a new wheelchair prescription and trialed that with the equipment rep. We also did a joint visit to the day program and looked at community access, so how he accessed getting in and out of the van, and writing the supporting documentation for how he should do that, and provided staff education. I trialed a walker, which we couldn't implement because he sadly he pushed it away, and it was one of those really difficult situations where it wasn't able to be implemented. But we looked at gait re-education where possible, and it was using very simple strategies of communication to try and reinforce safe practice, and got him some new footwear. The PBS practitioner looked at behaviours impacting ability to support his mobility and therefore manual handling. There was a lot of behaviour going on around how staff supported the gentleman with manual handling. The speech pathologist supported the team with communication strategies and identified that he in fact could use a tablet to indicate very simple needs, which had not been identified before. The psychologist supported with frustration regulation, and the exercise physiologist did some capacity building exercise to try and improve strength and endurance. And just in terms of other additional recommendations, thinking about the holistic, the holistic picture with this participant, he also needed his vision checking. Staff had noticed that he had clouding of his eyes, and we wondered whether he might have glaucoma. And he hadn't had a neurology review for a long time, and some of his falls were related to his seizures. So given that his seizures hadn't been managed well for a long time, we recommended a neurology review, which he did end up having as well. So it was one of the best examples of MDT working that I've been involved in. It was really rewarding. So we are pretty much at the end of our presentation. And I think it's time, we do have time ourselves to be on the line a touch longer before the town hall if anybody does have a question that they would like to ask. Otherwise, feel free to head off and have a little break before the town hall. And thank you so much for your engagement in the chat. It's really nice for us. It's hard engaging via Teams, but your communication via the chat does make that so much easier. So thank you so much. And you've really insightful comments do demonstrate that you guys have a very good understanding of MDT working. Does anybody have a question?
Just before everybody runs off, I'm just popping in the chat now our react to feedback. So those of you who do want to pop out, if you can just put a quick emoji up there for us, that would be amazing.
What about that? Does anybody have a question for any of us? Well, you're all good.
I think Jen had her hands up at one stage midway through. I saw. No, that's okay. Did you have a question, Jen? I'm on single screen. It was a bit hard to track everything.
Yeah, I can't see either.
Sorry, it was an error. I clicked it. I was trying to click the next and something next to it.
It was an error, and I've called you out in front of the country. I'm sorry about that, Jin.
Absolutely fine. Thanks, Renee.
Ouch.
Oh, but can I just say, what a great case study. Absolutely wonderful to see how an MDT team really sort of contributes and supports one single participant.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think it was nice too, because it also highlights that there's not always, you can't always do all of the things that you would like to in your own discipline, but as a whole we can bring so much to the individual participant and meet them where they're at. In terms of traditional gateway education, I couldn't do what I would like to, but yeah, we did the best we could and modified risk in all the other ways that we possibly could. Yeah.
No, I think that is a really important part of it, isn't it, Jin, actually, as well, just thinking about, well, what does the participant want? Is this what they want at the moment? What are the things we can work on? We all have our tunnel vision about what we can achieve with them, but it's got to match. There's only a capacity for a participant to do so much in a time. It's exhausting being having your capacity built all the time. So I think we all know that. So, what can they manage? What's important to them? Who does that bring in at the time? Yeah. And being able to switch between our team members and think about who can offer the most benefit at that time it's actually such a luxury, I think. I can see some people putting some feedback in, which is lovely. Thank you. That helps us a lot as to where to go next and what information people might want. Is there anybody that has any questions? Oh, I can see the WA team on screen again, and I can see that they've rectified that food situation and they've gone and found something. What have you got there, guys? Is that like a whole deli on the table there?
Bar Me's from the Beaver Lake lunch bar, the famous Beaver Lake lunch bar.
Excellent. I love it. Because, of course, in WA it is lunchtime. I forget about that. I was like, wow, that's an ambitious afternoon tea, but I suppose it's lunch. Very good.
Andrew just asked if the PowerPoint slides will be uploaded, and we're happy to share we can pop the PDF of that on all of the clinician chats, Renee, can't we?
Yeah, we'll think about the most appropriate way to share that. We do record these sessions too. We'll make them available. You've probably realised we're having some challenges with the LMS at the moment. I don't like saying that out loud, but there it is. And so once we get those sorted as well, we'll be able to look at making the sessions available too. Any other questions? Okay. Well,